Hello. Our topic this week are professional practices as relevant to kitchen and bath design. And so in this video, we're going to talk about project contracts and pricing your design services. Starting out with the basics, what is a contract? It is a legal document outlining the responsibilities of both parties in an agreement. Right? And you want to make sure that it covers the scope of work, the fees, the schedule, and any other terms and conditions. In general, we need to work with a contract because communication is important, and always get it in writing. Here in the kitchen and bath design field, all right, you have the NKBA available to you, and they have a suite of business management forms, all right, and one of those, maybe one of the most important, is called the NKBA Standard Form of Agreement. It's not necessarily a fillable form. You just, fill in the blanks. Instead, it's kind of a description or instructions for creating a contract between a designer and a client. And in this NKBA standard form of agreement, they identify 7 types of decisions that must be made and agreed upon. All right, you're going to establish the type of fee, describe the project, describe the planning process, make sure you understand what's not included. You're going to talk about what happens when changes are made, when changes are made, and some other conditions, including design copyrights and what happens if the project is sold. Let's talk about that first key decision, which is type of fee, right? And NKBA identifies 3 different types that might be useful to you. All right. The first one's called a measure fee. It's normally a flat fee charged to visit the house. It's literally called a measure fee because you're going out to measure the existing conditions. All right. The next one is a retainer fee. All right, and this is for your design services. Right? It could be a percentage of the project budget, it could be a flat fee, or any combination of the two. Right? And finally, you could charge an hourly fee. All right, and this is really common for kitchen and bath projects when you are simply asked to make some product selections or surface selections, all right, and not involved in a larger capacity. Now, those NKBA fee types are really pretty minimal. All right, so let's take a look at a larger look at the industry and look at the ASID, residential contract forms, fee structures for interior design in general. All right. And looking at these, you can see that you could charge for design services, purchasing services, and I've separated these out into 2 categories, and project administration services. So your contract could charge for each of these 3 categories in a different structure. So this is kind of a mix or match menu. All right, and let's talk about design services first. You could charge a fixed design fee or an hourly design fee, and there's many different ways for calculating which is appropriate for your projects. Right. The purchasing services, I've split these into 2 categories. You can either just bundle them up with your design services, either in a fixed design fee or an hourly design fee, right? Or you could separate these out, all right, and you could have a separate category, basically a separate fee structure for purchasing services. Right? And those include, all right, whether or not you are the client's purchasing agent. All right, so if you're not the client's purchasing agent, or if you are the client's purchasing agent, your fee structure is going to be different. Or if you are definitely the purchasing agent and you're separating that out from any design fees, there's different ways to calculate how you'll be paid for your services. Finally, project administration. What is that? That is working with the client and contractor while construction is going on. All right, and there's a couple different options for this. ASID calls it option A, B, and C. You can charge a fixed fee. Right? You can charge a percentage of the construction cost, or you can charge for this hourly. All right, so you can see that this is a fairly complicated topic, and we're not going to dig too deep into it, but just know that setting your fee structures is kind of an ongoing issue, and you need to make sure that you are covered no matter which one you choose. Let's come back to that NKBA standard form of agreement. Right. And items 2, 3, and 4 all fall under the category of scope of work. So item 2, you're going to describe the overall scope of the project. All right. And what exactly are you doing? Item 3, you're going to go into more detail about your project process. Right? And some designers like to go into a lot more detail than others, but in general, you need to talk about what kind of services you're providing and what kind of deliverables, those are things that you give basically to the clients, what kind of deliverables you're providing. So for example, under job site visits, how many job site visits are you making? Under plans, how many sets of plans are you making? All right, are you doing one preliminary and one final, or are you just giving one final? Are you giving 3 sets of preliminary plans for the client to choose from? These are things that you need to set up in advance. And finally, it's important, it's just as important to clarify what's not going to be provided as what's going to be provided. All right, so be specific about this. One thing NKBA specifically calls out is electrical plans. Are you going to do this, or is the electrical contractor going to? Sometimes it's separated out from the rest of the work. Also be real specific about showrooms, all right, and selection of final finish materials. Do you physically take your clients and visit with them to the different showrooms, all right, or does the client do that on their own? When we're talking about scope, we also need to talk about scope creep. Scope creep are small changes to the project scope, all right, typically requested by the owner, but they can sometimes come from plan check, from inspection, or sometimes you find things in the existing conditions that need to be fixed or that affect your design. All right, so these are changes and they add up bit by bit as the project progresses and your scope creeps larger and larger. Right? They can have significant effect on project cost and therefore they have a big effect on your designer's time as you end up redesigning, right? And therefore your profits. Scope creep is common during design, but even more once the construction begins. So how do you manage scope creep? The answer is communication and communication and more communication. All right. Make sure your client really understands what they're getting so that there's no surprises later. Right? And make sure that you document everything in writing, especially that initial scope and any changes. In general, the earlier that any changes are made in the design and construction process, the better. Right? As you get later and later in that process, changes will cost more. All right, in this video, we've just covered contracts, what they are, why you need them. You took a look at the NKBA standard form of agreements, and we also took a deeper look at some of the ASID different fee structures for interior design. Thank you.